Hi e-bike friends, this is Forrest Woolman back again with you here at the Electric Bike Report. And I'm excited to tell you about this e-bike, the Engwe M20 full suspension all-terrain e-bike. So you're probably looking at this M20 and noticing how sporty this e-bike looks. We rode this bike over 100 miles on city streets, bike paths, and desert trails, and I can attest that this bike rides sporty too, and it was a lot of fun. Now, built with both front and rear suspension, 20-inch fat tires, a 750-watt rear hub motor, and an optional second battery, this bike can give you many hours and many miles of fun riding almost anywhere. Considering similar bikes are selling for over $3,000, it's surprising to see Engwe selling this bike for less than $2,000. So if you're interested in a full suspension e-bike like this, stay tuned to learn more about the Engwe M20 full suspension electric bike here on the Electric Bike Report. So before I begin, please take a moment to consider hitting the subscribe button and notification bell on your screen. Doing so helps support this channel, which enables us to bring in more bikes to test and review, and it will let you know of any future videos we post featuring more e-bike content that you'll like. Here at the Electric Bike Report, we think the Engwe M20's full suspension design is a big deal. And it also makes this M20 competitive with similar bikes like the Super 73 R Series. But a big difference with this bike is it's currently priced at almost $2,000 less than its Super 73 counterpart. That means this bike gives you a lot of value for your money. Now, when reviewing the forks, I'll admit I haven't seen forks before from the Partner suspension brand, but the fork worked well when I off-roaded this bike out in the desert. The same can be said about the rear suspension. Now, putting a rear monoshock with a swing arm suspension, that's not common on e-bikes. We believe that Engwe did a good job with their monoshock swing arm design and using this HLT 100 shock. It's basic and simple, but it also does a good job absorbing the bumps, ditches, and whoop-de-doos I encountered when I was off-roading. And this brings me back to this bike's price. Previously, if you wanted an e-bike like this, you had to just a few choices and you'd be stuck paying well over $3,000 for a bike like this. But Engwe currently prices this bike well below $2,000. So if you've been on the fence thinking about picking up an e-bike like this because of the price, then the M20's low price might just motivate you to pick up one of these. Now, in order to offer an e-bike like the M20 with more advanced suspension design and at a competitive price, Engwe had to use some lower price components. The mechanical brakes and tourney shifter are examples, of course. But this enabled Engwe to offer a unique design for riders who aren't ready to commit to the higher price models and who want a better suspension-based riding experience. All in all, if you're into riding an e-bike that has more of a BMX bike appeal, then I think you're going to like riding this bike. I know I did. So that's the overview of the Engwe M20. Next up, we'll go over this bike's key specs. As I mentioned before, the suspension is one of the things that makes this bike really special. This Partner air fork offers up to 100 millimeters of wheel travel and has a compression adjuster. Now, the adjustments didn't make that much of a difference for my 190-pound weight on this bike, but it definitely rode better than if I were using a rigid fork. The fork doesn't have a lockout, but that's not really needed since this bike relies more on output from the motor than on pedaling. The rear monoshock, it's from HLT Suspension. Also never seen that brand before. It has 125 millimeters of travel, and there's no adjustment for damping or compression. To make this shock work, the chainstay was redesigned to be a swing arm, pivoting on an 1.25 inch bearing, and it's pretty basic. The rear suspension overall is pretty basic in design, which is why the shock doesn't really need an adjustment feature. In my view, this suspension design works well for this kind of e-bike. Adding a finishing touch to the suspension are the 20-inch by 4-inch Chaoyang all-terrain tires. Now, over the past 6 months, I've ridden over a dozen moped-style e-bikes like this, and I have to say, I am impressed with the suspension design and how well it performed. Speed on this bike, supported by a 750-watt motor mounted on a rear wheel hub. Rather than using spokes, both wheels are mag rims, meaning the rear wheel handles the motor weight better by not requiring spoke adjustments and maintenance, nor is there a worry of having to true the rims as you put more miles on this bike. The motor is generic, so we don't really know who makes it or have any details about it. Energy for the motor comes from a single 13 amp hour battery. Now this bike comes set up with an additional battery to be mounted right here. We recommend you buy the second battery for more range. After all, the price of the bike is already a steal of a deal. Plus the range isn't great with just one battery, as you will discover when we go over the range test results in a couple of minutes. One of the reasons the M20 is called moped style has to do with this non-adjustable seat. That's unfortunate because this bike would really shine if taller riders like me could raise the seat and actively pedal. I stand at 6 feet tall and my hips started feeling uncomfortable when trying to pedal this bike at more than about 10 spins. We all agree here at Electric Bike Report, Engwe would make a lot of riders happy by offering the M20 with an adjustable seat. But there's still a lot of things this bike has going for it that will surely satisfy a lot of riders. The gearing features Shimano 7-speed with the tourney shifter, a 14 to 28 tooth cassette, 46 tooth chain ring, and you can order this bike online and have it shipped to your home or place of business. It also comes with a 12-month limited warranty. So that's it with the key specs. Next up are performance tests and test results. E-bikes like this Engwe M20 can travel at pretty fast speeds. So we like to make sure the braking is up to the task of stopping the rider in a hurry when needed. This is why we perform a brake test. Here at EBR, we bring bikes up to 20 miles per hour before hitting the brakes and measuring the distance it takes to stop. We try to brake as quickly as we can while also maintaining control of the bike in a fashion similar to how you, the average rider, would. We do this multiple times and then calculate an average stopping distance. Now, most e-bikes we review have hydraulic brakes because they stop quicker and generally perform better. But to keep costs down, the M20 has mechanical brakes. So as expected, the average stopping distance for this bike in our brake test was a little longer than the average for bikes with hydraulic brakes. It was 24 feet 5 inches. A lot of regular bikes still have mechanical brakes because they work decent, they're easy to fix, they're easy to maintain, and the parts are consistently cheaper than hydraulic brake parts. We understand Engwe's reason to opt for mechanical brakes. If I were to buy this bike right now, with the money I'm saving on the low price, I would also upgrade and get hydraulic brakes. We didn't find anything wrong with the mechanical brakes, but this is a faster bike and faster bikes deserve stronger brakes. In order to gain a better sense of motor engagement, we put all the bikes we review on a circuit test. The circuit course is a 1-mile loop with 4 right-hand turns and a small 30-foot climb. We do multiple laps on this course, starting with a lap with no motor assistance. Then one in each level of pedal assistance, in this case PAS 1 through 5. With this, we can see the speed profile of the bike and get a sense of how well the motor engages with the rider's pedaling. As you can see from the chart on the screen, this bike's motor kicks out power in nice sized doses, increasing by about 2 miles per hour with each jump in PAS level. For sure, pedaling with no motor was no fun. And when starting out from a dead stop, it takes this bike a few pedal turns to get going. But once it gets going, it really gets going. Now, when pedaling in PAS 5, this bike never went more than 25 miles per hour. Engwe said the pedal assist engages up to 28 miles per hour, but the only time we saw that was when we were pedaling downhill. Also, this bike has a 14 to 28 tooth cassette. This cassette is geared too low when you're pedaling at top speed, which causes ghost pedaling. That is pedaling where your crank arm is pedaling around, but it's not really making a direct result on the rear wheel output, which is wasted energy. At the highest speeds, the only role my pedaling played was to keep the PAS activated for continuing motor output. So we challenged Engwe to address this. Perhaps they could replace the cassette with something like an 11 to 28 tooth cassette. Switching to a smaller cog for 7th gear will definitely reduce, if not replace, the ghost pedaling. Also changing to a larger chain ring, like a 52 tooth instead of the current 46 tooth one. That would help. Also, the motor's torque output is pretty low at the bottom end when you're starting from a stop or slow speed. This bike uses a cadence sensor instead of a torque sensor, which means it's only counting how many times the pedal goes around rather than detecting how hard you're pedaling. Therefore, that's something else we challenge Engwe to make this motor respond better at the lower power range. They could install a torque sensor, although that will increase the cost of the bike, and its price is one of its selling points. The other option is for them to recalibrate the cadence sensor for riders who want better low-end output. I know I did when I was off-roading. Now, if you're buying this bike to mostly ride in the dirt, this is especially important for you. We're not writing off this bike because it still has great features, and current owners will find that changing the cassette is not a big deal anyway, and can make a noticeable improvement to their ride. A key question you likely have about the M20 is, how far can it go? Well, we've done some range testing to answer that question. When doing the range test, we try to answer two main questions. How far will this bike go on a single charge, relying on minimum pedal assistance from the motor? And how far will this bike go when relying on maximum pedal assistance from the motor? Now, even though this bike can take 2 batteries, our test presents numbers based on using 1 battery. In the minimum PAS range test, riding the whole time in PAS 2, this M20 went 36.78 miles on a single battery charge. The average speed was 12.1 miles per hour, and it was in a time of 2 hours, 54 minutes. This first test result was okay, but not great. That's because usually a fat tire bike this size, 750 watt motor, 13 amp hour battery, they can usually go about 10 miles further on that single battery charge. Now on the maximum PAS range test, riding the whole time in PAS 5 and pedaling, this bike went 18.59 miles, averaging a speed of 22.1 miles per hour and a time of 50 minutes. Now, I had a lot of fun riding at that speed, but again, the distance was just so-so. We were expecting to see something closer to 25 miles on that test. But here's the great news. If those numbers don't sound like enough for you, for just a few $100s more, you can roughly double those results and expect around 36 to 74 miles. Even on the more expensive dual battery setup, you still are paying a lot less than most other bikes this style. And that'll be more mileage than on most too. So we highly recommend you take a look at the dual battery setup like we have on ours. Now back to the other common question we get here at Electric Bike Report about e-bikes. How well does it do on hills? We were curious to see how the M20 with its 750 watt motor would do on the hill climbing test and in our hill climbing test. Our hill climb test really pushes our test bikes to the limits using one of the highest hills around southern Utah's own Hellhole Trail. This trail is a third of a mile long and has a grade averaging 12%. This hill climb is probably longer and probably steeper than any hill that's regularly faced by an average commuter. But this test really helps answer the question about an e-bike's climbing ability. Now we do the test in 2 parts. The first is using throttle only with no pedaling. And the second test involves basic pedaling while using the highest PAS level, number 5. Now I'm happy to say in the throttle only hill test, this bike reached the top, and it did it in a time of 1:35, average speed of 11.4 miles per hour. And that's a good result for this kind of bike. In the maximum PAS hill test, using PAS 5, this bike reached the top in a time of 1:31 seconds, average speed of 11.9 miles per hour. Now, first of all, we're happy to see the M20 reach the top on both tests. Not all e-bikes make it to the top. And earlier I mentioned how this bike has a lot of top-end power, helping it reach speeds upwards to 25 miles per hour. Well, that helps this bike tremendously in both tests. In the throttle-only test, this bike is really relying on everything the motor can produce. It's not uncommon for a bike to fail on the throttle-only test, but then succeed on the PAS hill climb test, the high PAS test. There's a bit of irony with these results though, in that the maximum PAS time and average speed was just a tad bit quicker than the throttle only result. Usually the differences are greater between the two. One thing we can deduce is that the motor used considerably more battery power on the throttle only test than on the maximum PAS test. But all in all, the important takeaway from these tests is that the Engwe M20 will likely get you to the top of most hills you're going to face, especially when you're pedaling. When we concluded our review and testing of the Engwe M20, our team agreed that this bike offers riders some unique benefits at a cost well below the competition. Namely, the full suspension is a big plus on this bike. With most of the alternative full suspension e-bikes costing more than $3,000, it's refreshing to see you can get full suspension and give up a few higher end components for well below $2,000. After all, we are still in the early stages of the e-bike renaissance era, which means the number of people riding e-bikes today is only a fraction of what it will be in 5 to 10 years. Most people buying e-bikes now are still learning about the differences in designs in relation to the type of riding they want to do. And many of those same people prefer to spend less on their first e-bike. So, as more people discover the dual suspension option and see it listed at a price much closer to hardtails and fully rigid frames, they're going to opt for this full suspension model. After all, there's no looking back. Now here at EBR, we're looking forward to putting more miles on this bike to see how it holds up, including the cheaper components. Engwe's idea in designing this box is real out-of-the-box thinking, and we hope this proves to be a success for them, its customers, and the e-bike world as a whole. So this concludes our review of the Engwe M20. I hope you found this video helpful. If so, then please click like. Now, if you're currently not a subscriber to our channel, please subscribe. It really helps us get the word out to others about e-bikes and to you. To check out current pricing for this e-bike, there's a check best price link you can click at the bottom. Also, be sure to click the link to our in-depth written review, written by yours truly. It has the details I mentioned today, plus a lot of other important stuff. So that's it for now. I'm Forrest Woolman with the Electric Bike Report. Thanks for watching. I look forward to seeing you out there on the trails hopefully someday. And please remember, always keep your hands on the bar, your feet on the pedals, and your eyes on the road. And I look forward to seeing you here next time at the Electric Bike Report.